The morning began before the sun had fully risen. Emily Carter was already awake, sitting at the tiny kitchen table in her small apartment, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. The silence around her should have been peaceful, but it wasn't. Her mind was racing too fast. Today mattered. No, that wasn't true. Today could change everything. For nearly 3 years, she had been trapped in a cycle she couldn't escape. Every morning started with hope, and every evening ended with disappointment, interviews, rejections, promises that never became opportunities. And through all of it, there was only one thing that kept her moving: her daughter. A small voice drifted from the bedroom. "Mama?" Emily immediately stood. The stress vanished from her face. The worry disappeared. Because mothers learned how to hide their fears. "I'm here, sweetheart." 5-year-old Sophie walked into the room, rubbing her eyes. Her curly brown hair was a complete mess, and she carried her favorite stuffed rabbit under one arm. Emily smiled. "There she is." Sophie climbed onto her lap. "Is today the big day?" Emily nodded. "It is. The important meeting." "That's right." Sophie smiled. "Then you're going to get the job." Emily laughed softly. "I hope so." "No." Sophie shook her head seriously. "You will." Children had a strange way of believing in miracles. Sometimes Emily wished she still could. She kissed the top of Sophie's head. "Let's get you breakfast." An hour later, the apartment was buzzing with activity. Emily had carefully chosen her best outfit: blazer, a white blouse, a black skirt. Nothing expensive, nothing impressive. But everything was clean, neat, and professional. She checked herself in the mirror, then checked again, and again. Not because she was vain, because she was terrified. The interview was for a marketing coordinator position at Sterling Dynamics, one of the fastest growing technology companies in the state. The salary alone would completely change their lives. No more overdue bills. No more choosing between groceries and electricity. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. She had spent weeks preparing, researching the company, studying their campaigns, practicing answers. This opportunity felt different. It felt real. Her phone rang. Emily instantly smiled. Mrs. Jenkins. The elderly neighbor had agreed to watch Sophie during the interview. But the moment she answered, her smile disappeared. "Oh no." The older woman's voice sounded weak. "I'm so sorry, dear." Emily's stomach tightened. "You don't sound well." "I woke up with a fever." Emily closed her eyes. "Not today. Please, not today." "I don't think I should be around Sophie." The words felt like a punch to the chest. Emily lowered her head. She couldn't even be upset. Mrs. Jenkins was a wonderful woman. This wasn't her fault. "It's okay," Emily said quietly. "Take care of yourself." After the call ended, silence filled the apartment. A dangerous silence, the kind that comes before panic. Emily sat down slowly. No babysitter, no family nearby, no close friends available, no backup plan. Always no backup plan. Sophie looked up from her cereal. "Mama." Emily forced a smile.
"Yeah, sweetheart."
"You look sad." "I'm thinking." "About the meeting." Emily nodded. Sophie tilted her head. "Can I help?" The innocence nearly broke her heart. Emily looked at the clock. 48 minutes. That was all. 48 minutes before her interview. Her eyes moved around the room, searching for a solution that wasn't there. Then she looked at Sophie and made a decision. "We might have to go together." Sophie grinned. "Really?" Emily laughed despite herself.
That excited.
"I've never seen your office."
"Well, it's not my office. Yet."
Emily stared at her daughter. Sometimes it felt like Sophie believed in her more than she believed in herself. The ride downtown felt longer than usual. Traffic crawled. Red lights lasted forever. Every minute increased her anxiety. By the time the taxi stopped outside Sterling Dynamics, Emily's hands were shaking. The building towered above the city. Glass. Steel. Success. Everything she wasn't. At least that's how it felt. Sophie grabbed her hand. "We got this." Emily laughed nervously. Oh, the lobby was breathtaking. Marble floors reflected sunlight from enormous windows. Employees in expensive suits moved confidently through the space. Everyone looked successful. Everyone looked like they belonged. Emily suddenly felt painfully aware of her discount blazer and worn handbag. The receptionist noticed them immediately. Her eyes landed on Sophie, then narrowed, not dramatically, just enough. Emily knew that look. Single mothers recognized it instantly. The look that said trouble. The look that said inconvenience. The look that said you don't belong here. Good morning, Emily said politely. I have a 9 o'clock interview. The receptionist barely looked at her. Name, Emily Carter. The woman typed something, then looked up again, at Sophie. Your daughter? Yes. The receptionist sighed. Emily's stomach dropped. My childcare arrangement fell through this morning. The explanation came quickly. She'll sit quietly, I promise. The receptionist's expression didn't change. Please wait. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, listened, then hung up. Already knew. The answer was written all over the woman's face. I'm sorry. No. Please, not this. Cannot proceed with the interview. The words hit harder than she expected. Emily blinked. What? Company policy. I don't understand. No children are permitted during interviews. Emily stared. Surely this couldn't be happening. Not after everything. Not because of this. I traveled 40 minutes to get here. I'm sorry. I prepared for weeks. I'm sorry. My babysitter got sick. I'm sorry. The woman repeated the same phrase over and over like a machine. No compassion. No flexibility, humanity, just policy. Emily felt heat rising into her face. Embarrassment, frustration, humiliation, the familiar cocktail of emotions she knew far too well. Can I reschedule? The receptionist hesitated, then shrugged. We've already finalized today's candidate schedule. The meaning was clear. There would be no second chance. Sophie squeezed her hand. Emily swallowed hard. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of strangers. Not in front of her daughter. She straightened her shoulders. Thank you for your time. Then she turned toward the exit. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her future had just disappeared. Again, another closed door. Another rejection. Another reminder that life was harder when you were doing it alone. The lobby suddenly felt enormous, cold, unwelcoming. Emily stared at the revolving doors ahead. Just a few more steps. Then she could leave. Then she could fall apart. Then she heard a voice. Excuse me. She froze. The voice wasn't loud. It carried authority. The kind that made people listen. Emily turned. A man had just stepped out of a private elevator. Tall. Impeccably dressed. His charcoal suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. It wasn't the suit that drew attention. It was his presence. People noticed him immediately. Employees straightened. Conversations paused. The receptionist sat up straighter. The man looked directly at Emily. What happened? The receptionist quickly answered. Nothing, sir. His eyes shifted toward her. The look he gave made the woman immediately regret speaking. That wasn't the question. Silence. The lobby became noticeably quieter. Everyone was watching. The receptionist cleared her throat. The candidate brought a child. And company policy prevents interviews under those circumstances. The man's gaze moved to Sophie, then to Emily, then back again. Unlike everyone else, he wasn't looking at them with irritation. He seemed curious, interested, almost concerned. You came for an interview? Emily nodded. Yes. And your childcare arrangement failed? Yes. He glanced at Sophie. The little girl offered a cheerful wave. The man actually smiled. Then he looked back at Emily. You still came. Emily frowned, to want to give up. For a moment, neither spoke. The man seemed to be studying her. Not her clothes, not her appearance. Her, as if searching for something. Finally he nodded. What position? Marketing coordinator. The receptionist immediately interrupted. Sir, the hiring manager already declined. I didn't ask the hiring manager. The woman fell silent. The man looked at Emily again. What experience do you have? Emily hesitated. The entire situation felt surreal. But she answered anyway. 5 years in digital marketing before my daughter was born. Agency work. Mostly. Campaign strategy? Yes. Content development? Yes. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Interesting. Then he asked the question nobody else had. Why haven't you worked recently? Emily swallowed. Because this was always the hardest part. Single mother. Understanding flashed across his face. Not pity. Recognition. A subtle but important difference. The man nodded slowly. He surprised everyone, including her. Come with me. Emily blinked. What? Come with me. The receptionist looked horrified. Mr. Reynolds. The entire lobby seemed to freeze. Mr. Reynolds. The name rippled through Emily's memory. She knew it. Everyone knew it. Founder, CEO, millionaire entrepreneur, owner of Sterling Dynamics. The man standing in front of her wasn't just important. He was the company. And somehow he was speaking directly to her. I don't understand, Emily admitted. A faint smile appeared on his face. That's okay. He glanced at Sophie.
Do you like coloring book?
Sophie's eyed over, yes.
Alexander nodded.
Good. Then he looked at Emily. 'Cause I have a feeling this interview is about to happen. The entire lobby fell silent. Every employee, every receptionist, watching, staring, trying to understand what was happening. But nobody was more shocked than Emily, 'cause for the first time that morning, for the first time in months, for the first time in years, a door that had been slammed shut, then was opening again. Emily followed Alexander Reynolds through the lobby in a daze. The world around her felt distant, muted, like she was watching someone else's life unfold. Employees stepped aside as the CEO walked past. Some glanced at Emily with curiosity. Others openly stared at Sophie, who seemed completely unfazed by the attention. Are we in trouble? Sophie whispered. Alexander looked down at her. Not unless coloring books have suddenly become illegal. Sophie giggled. Emily couldn't help smiling. A few moments later, they entered a private executive floor. The atmosphere changed immediately. Everything was quieter, more polished, more exclusive. Alexander led them toward a large office surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. When he opened the door, almost stopped walking. The office was stunning. Natural light flooded the room. Modern furniture, bookshelves, artwork, a view that seemed to stretch forever. Alexander moved behind his desk. You can sit. Emily carefully lowered herself into a chair. Sophie sat beside her. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Alexander leaned back slightly. Let's start over. Emily nodded. My name is Emily Carter. I know. A faint smile touched his lips. But I'd still like to hear your story. No interviewer had ever asked that before. Most wanted bullet points, credentials, employment gaps, weaknesses, strengths. Nobody asked for her story. Emily hesitated, then began. She spoke about her years in marketing, the campaigns she had managed, the clients she had worked with, the excitement she once felt building brands and solving problems. Alexander listened carefully, never interrupting, never checking his phone, never glancing at the clock. When she finished describing her professional experience, quietly, and then, Emily knew what he meant. Sophie happened. The little girl smiled proudly. Alexander smiled back. Emily continued. She explained how Sophie's father had left before the birth, how daycare costs had become impossible, how freelance projects weren't enough, how every year away from the workforce made returning harder. She expected judgment. Instead, she found understanding. Alexander folded his hands. That must have been difficult. The simple acknowledgement almost caught her off guard. Most people offered advice, or criticism, or pity. Very few simply acknowledged reality.
It was.
Alexander nodded. Still is. Emily laughed softly. Sometimes. He looked toward Sophie. The child was quietly drawing on a notepad someone had placed near the chair. She seems happy. Emily's expression softened. She's the reason I keep going. Alexander looked back at her. I believe that. Then his demeanor shifted slightly. The warmth remained. But now there was focus. Professional curiosity. Tell me something. Emily straightened. If a client hired you tomorrow and told you their engagement numbers had dropped 30% over the last year, where would you start? Relief washed over her. Finally, a real interview question she could answer. The data. Alexander nodded. Specifically, I'd identify when the decline began. Why? Because symptoms matter less than causes. A flicker of approval crossed his face. Emily continued. I'd examine audience behavior, performance, content strategy, customer feedback, and competitor activity. Then, I'd figure out what changed. Alexander leaned forward slightly. And if nothing changed? Something changed. The answer came instantly. Markets evolve, audiences evolve, platforms evolve. If results decline, something changed. For the first time, Alexander smiled fully. Interesting. The conversation continued. One question became 5. 5 became 10. Emily forgot about her nerves, forgot about the lobby, forgot about the humiliation from earlier. She simply focused on what she knew: marketing, strategy, people, stories. When she spoke about customer psychology, Alexander seemed particularly interested. You believe emotion drives decisions, almost always, even in business. Especially in business. He raised an eyebrow. Why? 'Cause people buy with emotion and justify with logic. Silence. Then Alexander laughed. A genuine laugh. I like that answer. Emily felt a small spark of confidence. The first one she'd felt in a long time. The interview stretched well beyond 30 minutes. 40. Then nearly an hour. Finally Alexander stood. Emily's stomach tightened. This was the moment. The decision, the verdict. He walked toward the windows, looked out over the city, then turned. I'd like you to meet someone. Emily blinked. Someone. Our director of marketing. Before she could respond, he pressed a button on his desk phone. A few minutes later, office door opened. A woman entered, mid-30s. Sharp eyes, professional posture, kind of person who immediately looked competent. Rachel, Alexander said. I want you to meet Emily Carter. Rachel looked curious. Nice to meet you. Emily stood. You too. Alexander gestured toward her. 5 years of agency experience. Strong strategic instincts. Excellent audience understanding. Rachel glanced between them. Sounds impressive. It is. The confidence in Alexander's voice surprised Emily. Rachel sat down. Tell me about yourself. The process started again. This time felt different. Less like an interrogation. More like a conversation. Rachel asked practical questions. Campaign examples, problem-solving situations, performance metrics. Emily answered everything honestly. An hour later, Rachel leaned back. Why haven't we hired her already? Emily stared. Rachel smiled. I'm serious. Alexander looked amused. I was waiting for your opinion. You have it. Rachel stood. Then looked directly at Emily. When can you start? For a second, Emily thought she had misheard. What? Rachel laughed. When can you start? Emily felt her throat tighten. Emotion surged through her before she could stop it, after years of struggle, years of rejection, years of wondering whether she'd ever get another chance. Someone was offering one. Right now. She blinked rapidly. Monday. Rachel nodded. Perfect. Alexander extended his hand. Welcome to Sterling Dynamics. Emily stared at his hand, then shook it. Everything changed in that moment. Not instantly, not magically, but undeniably had opened. A real one. When they left the executive floor, Sophie was bouncing with excitement. Mama got the job. The announcement echoed through the elevator. Emily laughed. Sophie. What? The little girl looked confused. It's true. Technically, it was. and somehow hearing it out loud made everything feel more real. When they reached the lobby, the receptionist looked up. Recognition flashed across her face. Then confusion, then shock, because Alexander Reynolds himself was walking beside the woman she had dismissed less than 2 hours earlier. Emily didn't stop, gloat, didn't say anything. She simply walked out with her daughter, head held high. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. Real hope. Outside, the city seemed brighter. The air felt lighter. Even the traffic sounded different. Sophie squeezed her hand. "I told you." Emily smiled. "Told me what?" "You were going to get the job." Emily laughed through the tears threatening to return. "Yeah. You should listen to me more." That made her laugh even harder. Upstairs, Alexander stood near the window of his office, watching them leave. Rachel entered quietly. "You hired her fast." Alexander nodded. "Sometimes, you know." Rachel studied him. "You don't usually rescue candidates from the lobby." "No." "You definitely don't conduct personal interviews." "No." Rachel crossed her arms. So what made her different? Alexander remained silent for several seconds. Finally he answered. "She showed up." Rachel frowned. "That's it?" "No." His eyes remained fixed on the street below. "Most people quit when life gives them an excuse." Rachel waited. Alexander continued. "She didn't." Meanwhile, Emily and Sophie stopped at a small diner on the way home. Nothing fancy, just a place they visited occasionally when money allowed. Today felt special. Today deserved celebration, even if the celebration was just pancakes. Sophie raised her glass of orange juice. A toast.
Emily laughed. "Toast."
To jobs. Emily lifted her own glass. To jobs. And coloring books. "Okay." "And nice millionaires." That one caught Emily off guard. She laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. "Sure." Sophie grinned. "See, best day ever." Emily looked out the window. For the first time in years, she found herself imagining the future. Not worrying about it. Not fearing it. Imagining it. A paycheck. Possibilities. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had looked at her in that lobby and seen something everyone else had missed. Not a problem. Not an inconvenience. Not a burden. Potential. And she had a feeling that their paths were far from finished crossing. Monday arrived faster than Emily expected. She barely slept the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, she worried that the entire thing had been a dream. Maybe she had imagined the interview. Maybe she had imagined the job offer. Maybe she had imagined Alexander Reynolds stepping into the lobby and changing the direction of her life. When she woke up and saw the company ID badge sitting on the kitchen table, reality returned. This was real. Sterling Dynamics had hired her, and in less than 2 hours, she would officially begin her first day. Sophie was already awake. The little girl sat at the table eating cereal while drawing on a piece of paper. "What are you making?" Emily asked. Sophie grinned. "Success poster." "A what?" Sophie proudly held it up. The drawing showed 3 stick figures. One was Emily. One was Sophie. The third was a very tall stick figure wearing what appeared to be a superhero cape. Emily immediately knew who it was supposed to be. "That's Mr. Reynolds, isn't it?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "He's the hero." Emily laughed. "I don't think he'd call himself that." "I would." After breakfast, they headed toward the daycare center that Sterling Dynamics had recommended. Emily still couldn't believe it. Not only had the company hired her, but they had helped arrange affordable childcare. For years, childcare had been one of the biggest obstacles standing between her and a career. Now that obstacle seemed smaller. Not gone, but smaller. The daycare staff welcomed Sophie warmly. The little girl immediately became distracted by toys and other children. Emily knelt beside her. "You'll be okay?" Sophie nodded. "You'll be okay." Emily smiled. "I think so." Sophie hugged her tightly. "Go do important stuff." Emily kissed her forehead. then stood. As she walked toward the door, she felt something strange. Freedom. Not complete freedom, but enough to breathe. Enough to focus. Enough to become something more than survival mode. When she arrived at Sterling Dynamics, building looked different. A few days ago, it had seemed intimidating. Today, it looked like opportunity. The receptionist from before was sitting behind the desk. Their eyes met. An awkward silence followed. Finally, the woman spoke. "Morning." Emily smiled politely. "Good morning." Neither mentioned what had happened. Neither needed to. Emily stepped into the elevator. A few moments later, she reached the marketing floor. The atmosphere buzzed with activity. People moved between desks carrying laptops, coffee cups, and folders. Conversations overlapped. Ideas bounced across the room. It felt alive. And for the first time in years, Emily felt alive too. A woman approached. "Emily." She turned. "Rachel, the director of marketing. Welcome aboard." "Thank you." Rachel gestured toward a desk near a large window. "That's yours." Emily walked over slowly. The desk wasn't fancy. It wasn't huge, but it was hers. A real workspace, a real job, a real chance. She placed her bag down and ran her hand across the smooth surface. For a moment, emotion threatened to overwhelm her. She had dreamed about this. Not the desk itself, the opportunity it represented, the possibility, the future. Rachel seemed to notice. Emily nodded. "It does." The morning disappeared in a blur. Passwords, training sessions, introductions, software tutorials, project briefings. By lunchtime, her brain felt overloaded, yet she loved every second. Was the world she had missed. The challenge, the creativity, the problem-solving. At noon, she entered the break room carrying a cup of coffee. Several employees sat around a table discussing campaign results. Looked up. "You're Emily." She nodded. "I'm Marcus." The man extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." Marcus seemed friendly, confident, the type of employee who knew exactly how things worked. "You've already become famous." Emily nearly choked on her coffee. Marcus grinned. "The CEO personally hired you." "Oh, that doesn't happen." Emily shifted uncomfortably. It was unusual circumstances. That's one way to describe it. The others laughed. Fortunately, nobody seemed hostile. Mostly curious. Still, Emily knew people were talking. How could they not? Stories traveled quickly in workplaces. Especially stories involving CEOs. Especially stories involving millionaires. The afternoon brought her first assignment. A struggling retail brand needed help increasing online engagement. The project immediately grabbed her attention. For the next several hours, she immersed herself in data, patterns, trends, customer behavior. The work felt familiar, like reconnecting with an old friend. By 3 o'clock, she had already identified several weaknesses in the company's strategy. At 4, Rachel stopped by her desk. "How's it going?" Emily turned her screen. "I found something interesting." Rachel leaned closer. Within minutes, they were discussing audience segmentation and content positioning. The conversation became increasingly detailed, increasingly strategic, increasingly exciting. When Rachel finally straightened up, she looked impressed. "That's a strong observation." Emily felt a surge of confidence. "Thank you. I want you to present that during tomorrow's meeting." Her eyes widened. "Tomorrow," Rachel nodded. "You can handle it." Then she walked away. Emily stared after her. Tomorrow. Already. Part of her was terrified. Another part was thrilled. Late in the afternoon, someone stopped beside her desk. She looked up. Alexander Reynolds. The entire office seemed to notice instantly. Conversations slowed. People glanced over. The CEO smiled slightly, settling in, stood automatically. "Yes. No need to stand." She sat again, feeling oddly self-conscious. Alexander glanced toward her computer screen. "What are you working on?" Emily explained her analysis. The engagement problem, audience disconnect, the proposed adjustments. He listened carefully, then nodded. "Interesting." Just one word. yet somehow it felt meaningful. Alexander looked around briefly, then back at her. "How's Sophie?" The question surprised her. "Good. Enjoying daycare." Emily smiled. "Apparently, she's already made 3 friends. That's impressive. She inherited that skill from someone else." A faint smile touched his face. For a moment, neither spoke. The interaction remained professional. Yet there was an ease to it, a comfort, something she couldn't quite explain. Finally, Alexander nodded. "Good." Then he walked away. The office gradually returned to normal. Marcus rolled his chair closer. "You know the CEO just spent 3 minutes talking to you." Emily laughed nervously. "So?" Marcus stared at her. "So?" She smiled. "I guess I haven't learned the office rules yet." Marcus shook his head. "You definitely haven't." When the workday ended, Emily practically floated out of the building, not because the day had been easy. It hadn't. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't, because she had accomplished something. She had contributed, learned, grown, moved forward. The feeling was addictive. That evening, Sophie met her at daycare with explosive enthusiasm. "Mama!" Emily barely had time to kneel before the little girl launched herself into her arms. "Hey, sweetheart. How was your important stuff?" Emily laughed. "Good. I knew it." "How was your day?" Sophie immediately began describing playground adventures, finger painting, and a boy who had accidentally put glue in his hair. The story lasted nearly the entire walk home, and Emily listened to every word. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't distracted by fear. She wasn't wondering how they'd survive next month. She wasn't calculating unpaid bills in her head. She wasn't staring into uncertainty. For the first time in a very long time, she could simply enjoy the moment. Later that night, after Sophie fell asleep, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table. The same table where she had sat days earlier, worrying about the future. Not solved. Not perfect. Different. Her phone buzzed. An email. From Sterling Dynamics. Emily opened it. Inside was confirmation of her benefits package. Health insurance, retirement contributions, employee support programs, professional development opportunities. She stared at the screen. For most people, these were ordinary things. For her, they felt extraordinary. Security, stability, a foundation. She leaned back in her chair, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. A future where Sophie had opportunities. A future where she could build something. A future where hope wasn't dangerous. Somewhere across the city, Alexander Reynolds stood alone in his penthouse apartment overlooking the skyline. A glass of water rested on the counter beside him. His phone displayed a report from Human Resources. New employee onboarding complete. Emily Carter. Most CEOs would never notice such details. Alexander did. Not because he was interested in monitoring employees, because something about that woman lingered in his thoughts. Her determination. Her resilience. The way she had shown up despite every obstacle. The way she refused to quit. He understood people like that. Because once upon a time, he had been one of them. And though neither of them realized it yet, the decision he made in that lobby wasn't just changing Emily's life. It was quietly beginning to change his too. By the end of her second week, Emily understood something important about Sterling Dynamics. It was not a gentle place. It was exciting, modern, and full of opportunity, but it was not gentle. People moved fast. Deadlines came faster. Ideas were praised one moment and torn apart the next. Nobody waited for her to catch up. Nobody slowed the room down because she had been away from corporate work for years. And strangely, Emily respected that. She did not want special treatment. She did not want pity. She wanted a fair chance. And every morning, when she sat at her desk with coffee in one hand and campaign reports open on her screen, she reminded herself that this was what she had asked for, a chance. Not comfort, not charity, a chance. Her first real test came during a Wednesday strategy meeting. The client was Harper Lane, sized fashion brand that had once been popular with young women, but had slowly lost relevance. Their sales were steady, but their online engagement was dying. Their posts felt polished but lifeless. Their ads looked expensive but forgettable. Rachel opened the meeting with her usual directness. "We need fresh thinking." Emily sat near the end of the conference table, open, pen ready. Around her were senior strategists, brand managers, and data analysts who all seemed more confident than she felt. A man named Derek leaned back in his chair. "The issue is budget," he said. "They need bigger influencer partnerships." Rachel looked unimpressed. "They tried that last quarter." "Not big enough." Emily listened quietly. Another strategist suggested a rebrand. Someone else suggested more paid ads. The room filled with expensive solutions. Emily looked down at the numbers again. Something did not feel right. The brand did not need to become louder. It needed to become honest. Rachel noticed her silence. Emily. Every head turned. Emily's heart jumped. "Yes. You've been staring at that report like it insulted you." "What do you see?" A few people chuckled. Emily sat straighter. "I think we're solving the wrong problem." The room went still. Derek raised an eyebrow. "That's bold." Emily forced herself not to shrink. Their audience didn't leave because the brand got smaller. They left because the brand stopped sounding like them. Rachel leaned forward. "Explain." Emily turned her notebook around. 2 years ago, their best performing posts were casual, personal, behind-the-scenes content. Real women, real outfits, real stories. Then they shifted into luxury style campaigns. Perfect lighting, perfect models, perfect language. But their core audience was never looking for perfection. They were looking for connection. No one spoke. So Emily continued. "Their customers are not rejecting the product. They're rejecting the distance." Harper Lane started talking at them instead of with them. Rachel's eyes sharpened. "What would you do?" "I'd rebuild trust before pushing sales." "How?" "Customer-led content, short-form videos using real buyers, styling challenges, honest body, positive messaging, smaller creators with loyal audiences, a campaign built around the idea that fashion should fit your actual life, not the life brands pretend you have." Silence followed. Wondered if she had said too much. Then Rachel smiled. "That is the first useful thing I've heard all morning." Derek's jaw tightened. Emily looked down critically. She did not want enemies. But success had a way of creating them before you even noticed. After the meeting, Rachel stopped beside her desk, that into a proposal by Friday. Emily nodded. "I will." And Emily. "Yes. Don't soften your ideas just because someone else looks uncomfortable." Emily absorbed that. "I'll try." "No," Rachel said. "Do it." That night, Emily stayed late, not because anyone forced her, because she wanted the proposal to be right. The office slowly emptied around her. Chairs rolled under desks. Elevators chimed. Lights dimmed section by section until only a few corners of the floor remained active. At 80:15, Marcus stopped by her desk. "You're still here." Emily looked up, rubbing her eyes. "Apparently. You know the building doesn't give awards for self-destruction." "I'm almost done." That is what people say 2 hours before they are almost done. She smiled tiredly. Marcus leaned against the desk. "Need help?" Emily hesitated, then turned her screen toward him. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus helped her tighten the data section. He challenged weak points, suggested clearer visuals, and explained which executives cared about which numbers. By the time he left, the proposal was stronger. Emily was grateful. At 9:05, she finally packed her bag. As she stepped toward the elevator, she saw light spilling from the executive corridor. Alexander's office door was open. She told herself to keep walking, but he looked up. "You're here late." Emily paused. So are you. That sounds like an accusation. It might be, he smiled faintly. Fair enough. She stood near the doorway, unsure if she should leave. Alexander gestured inside. Come in for a minute. Emily entered carefully. His office looked different at night. The city lights glittered behind him, and the quiet made the space feel less like a workplace and more like a confession room. He noticed the folder in her hand. Harper Lane. She nodded. Rachel asked me to build the proposal. Good. You knew. I hear things. CEO superpower. One of many. She laughed softly. He leaned back in his chair. How does it feel being back? The question was simple. The answer was not. Emily looked toward the window. Like I'm running to catch a train that already left. Alexander's expression shifted. Not pity. Understanding. And I'm scared if I slow down, everyone will realize I don't belong here. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, everyone feels that way at some point, even you. Especially me. Emily looked at him with surprise. He stood and walked toward the window. I built this company out of stubbornness more than confidence. People like to imagine success starts with certainty. It doesn't. Sometimes it starts with anger. Sometimes fear. Sometimes the simple refusal to be dismissed. Emily thought about the lobby, the receptionist, the closed door, the way he had stepped in. You know that feeling, she said softly. Alexander nodded. I do. For the first time, she saw something behind his polished calm. A shadow. A history. A wound he carried quietly. Before she could ask more, her phone rang. Daycare. Her stomach dropped. She answered immediately. Sophie had developed a fever. Serious, they said, but she needed to be picked up. Emily's face changed. Alexander noticed instantly. Is she okay? She has a fever. I need to go. Go. I still need to finish. Emily. His voice was gentle but firm. Go, she nodded, already moving. At the elevator, he called after her. Send me the draft tonight only if you can. Not if you should be resting. She looked back. That distinction mattered. More than he knew, Sophie was flushed and sleepy when Emily picked her up. The little girl clung to her neck. I don't feel good. I know, baby. At home, Emily changed Sophie into pajamas, gave her medicine, and made soup she barely touched. She sat beside her bed until Sophie finally drifted asleep. By then, it was nearly midnight. The proposal still waited, opened her laptop. For 20 minutes, she stared at the screen. Then she remembered Alexander's words. Only if you can, not if you should be resting. She closed the laptop. For once, she chose rest. The next morning, guilt arrived before the alarm. Emily rushed through breakfast, dropped Sophie with Mrs. Jenkins, who had recovered and insisted on helping, then hurried to work expecting disappointment. Instead, Rachel glanced at the draft and said, "This is strong." Emily blinked. "It isn't finished." "It's finished enough to build on." Derek, standing nearby, muttered, "Must be nice getting praised for half work." The words were quiet, but not quiet enough. Emily froze. Rachel turned slowly. "What was that?" Derek smiled thinly. "Nothing." But damage had already been done. Emily felt the old shame trying to crawl up her spine. The fear that maybe people really did think she was getting special treatment, that maybe she was only there because Alexander had chosen her, that maybe every success would be questioned. Rachel looked at Emily. "Conference room. 10 minutes. Bring the proposal." Emily nodded. The presentation was not perfect, but it was honest, clear, and emotionally smart. By the time she finished explaining the campaign concept, the client team on video call was nodding. One woman from Harper Lane wiped at her eye. "That's exactly what we lost," she said. "We stopped sounding real." Rachel glanced at Emily with quiet approval. The proposal moved forward. After the meeting, Derek avoided her. Marcus gave her a small salute. Emily sat at her desk, trying not to smile too widely. She had won a small battle, not against Derek. Later that afternoon, an envelope appeared on her desk. Inside was a simple note. Strong work on Harper Lane, trusting what you see. No signature. But she knew. Emily looked across the office toward the executive corridor. Alexander was not visible. Still, his words stayed with her. That evening, when she picked up Sophie, the little girl was feeling better and full of energy again. Did you do important stuff? Emily smiled. Yes. Did you win? Emily thought about the meeting, about Derek, about Rachel, about the client's reaction. Then she nodded. I think I did. Sophie grinned. I knew it. As they walked home hand in hand, Emily realized something was changing inside her. The world had not become easy. People had not magically become kind. Bills still existed. Fear still whispered. She was no longer standing outside the door begging to be let in. She was inside now, working, learning, proving herself. And somewhere high above the city, in an office filled with glass and light, a powerful man had seen her struggle and decided not to look away. That thought should have scared her. Instead, it gave her strength. Because for the first time in a very long time, Emily was beginning to believe that maybe Sophie had been right all along. Maybe she had not just gotten lucky. Maybe she really was going to win. The Harper Lane campaign became the first clear turning point in Emily's new life. At first, it was only a proposal. Then it became a strategy. Then it became a launch plan. Then, almost overnight, it became the thing everyone on the marketing floor was talking about. The campaign was simple but powerful. Real women. Real lives. Real stories. No perfect models pretending to laugh in sunlight. No cold luxury language. No glossy distance. Just customers standing in front of mirrors, in kitchens, in bedrooms, in offices, showing how Harper Lane clothes fit into their actual days. A teacher wearing a blazer over sneakers. A young mother styling one dress 3 ways. A college student turning a thrifted jacket into something bold. A nurse changing from scrubs into a soft sweater before meeting friends. The slogan was Emily's. Made for the life you actually live. When Rachel approved it, Emily had felt proud. When the client approved it, she felt relieved. When the campaign went live and the numbers started climbing, she felt something deeper. She felt restored. Not completely, not all at once, but enough. Every report showed improvement. Comments returned. Shares increased. Customers posted their own photos. People said the brand finally felt human again. Rachel called an emergency team meeting 3 weeks after launch, standing at the front of the conference room with the dashboard open behind her. Engagement is up 42%, she said. A low murmur spread around the room. Conversions are up 17%. More murmurs. Customer-generated content has tripled. Marcus leaned toward Emily and whispered, "Try not to look too smug." "I'm not smug," Emily whispered back. "You're smiling with your eyebrows." She pressed her lips together, fighting a laugh. Rachel turned toward her. "Emily, walk us through what worked." Emily stood slowly. A month ago, that request would have made her stomach twist. Now she still felt nervous, but the nervousness no longer controlled her. She explained the campaign clearly. She showed the data. She talked about emotional positioning, customer trust, and audience identity. And this time, when she spoke, people listened without surprise. That mattered. Being noticed once could be luck. Being heard twice could be curiosity. Being respected meant something had shifted. After the meeting, several team members stopped by her desk. "Good job. Smart angle. Strong insight." Even people who had barely spoken to her before now asked for her opinion. Derek did not. He walked past without looking at her. Emily told herself she did not care. Mostly, she meant it. That afternoon, Rachel came to her desk. "Do you have a minute?" Emily followed her into her office. Rachel closed the door. For one sharp second, Emily worried something was wrong. Then Rachel smiled. Relax. You look like I'm about to fire you. Emily laughed nervously. Old habit. Rachel sat on the edge of her desk. I want to move you onto the Northbridge account. Emily blinked. Northbridge was huge. A national client. The kind of account senior people fought over. That's a major project. It is. I've only been here a little over a month. And Emily hesitated. Rachel crossed her arms. You see what other people miss. That is useful. Emily swallowed. I don't want anyone thinking I skipped steps. People will think whatever protects their ego. That sounded like Rachel. Direct. A little brutal. Usually right. You earned the room, Rachel added. Now learn how to stand in it. Emily nodded slowly. I'll do it. Good. Meeting tomorrow at 10. When Emily left Rachel's office, she felt the familiar combination of excitement and fear. Opportunity always looked beautiful from a distance. Up close, it looked like responsibility. She was still thinking about Northbridge when she nearly walked straight into Alexander near the elevators. Oh, she said. Sorry. Alexander smiled. You apologize often. I have a child. Apologizing becomes a reflex. I see. He glanced toward Rachel's office. Good news. Emily tried to keep her face neutral. Rachel put me on Northbridge. His eyes warmed with approval. She has good judgment. Do you say that because you hired me? I say that because she chose you without asking me. That surprised her. She didn't talk to you? No. For some reason, that meant more. Emily looked down for a moment. I'm excited. And terrified. She laughed. Is it that obvious? A little. I'm working on it. You don't have to stop being afraid, Alexander said. You just have to stop letting fear make decisions for you. The words landed quietly, deeply. Emily looked up at him. There it was again. That strange feeling of being seen too clearly. Not exposed. Seen. Before she could answer, the elevator opened. Alexander stepped aside. After you. She smiled. Thank you. They rode down together in silence. Not uncomfortable silence, something softer. The kind of silence that made awareness louder. Emily noticed the scent of his cologne. Clean. Subtle. Expensive. She noticed the calm way he stood with his hands clasped in front of him. She noticed that he looked tired. Not visibly to everyone, she saw it. There were shadows beneath his eyes. A tightness near his jaw. You work too much, she said before thinking. Alexander turned slightly. Excuse me. Emily's face warmed. I'm sorry. That was rude. It was honest. I just mean, you look tired. For a moment, he seemed genuinely caught off guard. Then he smiled faintly. That is not a comment people usually make to me. Because they're scared of you. Are you? Emily thought about the lobby. The office. The way he spoke softly but with authority. The way entire rooms shifted around him. A little. He laughed under his breath. I appreciate the honesty. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Before Emily stepped out, Alexander said, I'm not as frightening as people think. She glanced back. No, I don't think you are. Then she walked out, leaving him standing there with an expression he could not quite hide. That evening, Emily found Sophie sitting on the floor surrounded by crayons and paper. What happened here? Emily asked. Art explosion. I see that. Sophie held up a drawing. It showed Emily at a desk, wearing what appeared to be a crown. Emily smiled. Why do I have a crown? Because you're the boss. I am definitely not the boss. You're my boss. Emily laughed and pulled her daughter close. That night, as Sophie slept, Emily reviewed the Northbridge files at the kitchen table. The account was complicated. A financial technology company trying to reach working families. Their problem was obvious. Sounded too cold. too technical, too distant from the people they claimed to help. Emily wrote notes late into the night because she felt forced, because she cared, because she understood working families. She understood people who checked bank balances before buying milk. She understood the quiet shame of declined cards and delayed bills. She understood that financial products were never just about numbers. They were about dignity. The next morning, she brought that perspective into the meeting. At first, the room leaned toward traditional ideas: security, speed, innovation, trust, all important, all expected. Emily listened. Then Rachel looked at her. "What are you thinking?" Emily glanced at the client brief. "I think they are speaking to customers like customers have perfect control over their lives." A senior strategist frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means the message assumes people are planning calmly. Most families don't look for financial tools when life is calm. They look when something has gone wrong. A car repair paycheck, a medical bill, a rent increase. The brand needs to sound less like a bank and more like a hand on someone's shoulder." The room quieted. Rachel leaned back. "Go on," Emily continued. "They don't need another app promising control. They need relief. They need to feel less alone. The emotional promise shouldn't be manage your money smarter. It should be breathe again." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's good." Even Derek, sitting across the table, looked briefly annoyed because he knew it was good. Rachel pointed at Emily. "Build that into a positioning deck." Emily nodded. "I will." By the end of the week, Emily was exhausted. Good exhausted. The kind that came from effort, not despair. On Friday afternoon, rain swept across the city in silver sheets. The office windows blurred, turning skyscrapers into watercolor shapes. Emily was gathering her things when her phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Jenkins. Sophie had drawn a picture for Mr. Reynolds and insisted Emily deliver it. Emily looked at the attached photo and smiled. It showed Alexander standing beside a giant building with a cape and a briefcase. Across the top, in wobbly letters, Sophie had written, "Thank you for helping my mama." Emily's throat tightened. She should have taken it home. She should have kept the moment private. Something made her print the drawing from the office printer. A few minutes later, she stood outside Alexander's office. His assistant was gone for the day. The door was partly open. Emily knocked softly. Alexander looked up from his laptop. "Emily, I can come back." "No, come in." She stepped inside, holding the paper. "This is from Sophie." His expression changed immediately, not dramatically, but enough. Emily handed it to him. He looked down. For several seconds, he said nothing. The city rain whispered against the glass behind him. Finally, he smiled. A real smile. "She gave me a cape. She thinks you're a hero." Alexander's thumb brushed lightly over the crayon lines. "I'm not." "I know." He looked up. Emily smiled gently. "But children are allowed to exaggerate." He laughed softly. Then his face grew quieter. "I'll frame it." "You don't have to." "I want to." Something in his tone made her stop arguing. He placed the drawing carefully on his desk, away from his coffee. Then he looked at her. "How is she?" "Happy. Loud. Bossy. And you?" Emily paused. It would have been easy to say fine. Automatic. Safe. But she did not. "I'm learning how to be more than tired." Alexander nodded slowly. "That's a good answer." "What about you?" He seemed surprised again. "Me?" "Yes. How are you?" The question hung in the room, heavy, because people probably did not ask him often. Or maybe they asked, but only as a formality. Alexander leaned back. "For a long time, I thought success would make me feel finished." "Did it?" "No." Emily waited. He looked toward the window. It made everything louder. That answer stayed with her, because she understood. Not the wealth, not the power, but the feeling. The belief that if you could just reach one point, one goal, one safe place, the fear would disappear. But fear did not disappear easily, simply changed clothes. Emily spoke softly. Maybe people don't become finished. Maybe they just become more honest. Alexander looked at her then, fully, quietly, as if her words had touched a place he kept locked. That sounds like something you learned the hard way. Most useful things are. A silence settled between them. Warm, uncertain, dangerous in its softness. Emily suddenly became aware that she was alone in Alexander Reynolds's office, after hours, talking about fear, success, and honesty like he was not her CEO and she was not still trying to prove her place in the company. She stepped back slightly. I should go. Alexander seemed to notice the shift too. Yes, but he did not move. Neither did she. Finally he said, "Thank you for bringing this." Emily nodded. "She'll ask where you put it. Tell her I'm giving it a place of honor. She'll expect proof. I'll provide evidence." Emily laughed, then left before the room could become too quiet again. On Monday morning, Sophie's drawing was framed on the bookshelf behind Alexander's desk. Not hidden, not tucked away, displayed. When Emily saw it during a brief project update, something inside her softened more than she wanted to admit. And across the desk, Alexander noticed. Neither of them said anything, but both understood something had changed. Not in a loud way, not in a way the office could gossip about yet, but in the slow, quiet way that matters most. Respect had become trust. Trust had become warmth. And warmth, if left alone too long, had a way of becoming something neither of them had planned for. The weeks that followed moved with a rhythm Emily had almost forgotten existed. Work, daycare, home, projects, bedtime stories, coffee, laughter. For the first time in years, her life was full, not overwhelmed. Full. There was a difference. She noticed it one Tuesday morning while standing in line at a grocery store. The cashier scanned her items. Milk, bread, fruit, chicken, a few snacks Sophie had begged for. The total appeared on the screen. Emily automatically felt the familiar knot of anxiety, the reflex she had developed over years of financial uncertainty. Then she remembered. She could afford it. Not comfortably, not extravagantly, but honestly. The realization hit her harder than expected. For years every purchase had required calculation, sacrifice. Delay. Now she could buy groceries without fear. She sat in her car afterward and cried for 5 minutes. Not from sadness. Pure relief. Later that day, she buried herself in work. Northbridge was becoming one of the most important projects of her career. Client loved her direction. Rachel trusted her judgment. And the campaign was steadily evolving into something powerful. Yet success brought new challenges. The more visible Emily became, the more attention followed. Most of it was positive. Not all. She first noticed it during lunch. Marcus slid into the chair across from her. "You know people are talking again." Emily sighed. "What this time?" "You," she groaned. Marcus laughed. "That's exactly the reaction I expected."
What are they saying?
He shrugged. "The usual. The usual is very broad. Some people think you're brilliant." "Okay. Some people think you're lucky." Emily expected that. "And," Marcus hesitated, "and some people think the CEO has a favorite employee." Emily stared at him. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she looked away. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. Not because she believed them, because she worked so hard. Every late night, every proposal, every presentation, every campaign. She had earned those victories. Marcus noticed her expression. "Ignore them. Easy for you to say." "No." His voice became more serious. "I mean it. People create stories whenever someone rises faster than expected, protects their ego." The phrase sounded familiar. Rachel had said almost the same thing. Emily pushed her lunch around the plate. "Good." She looked up. "What?" Marcus shrugged. It means you care. Before Emily could answer, buzzed. A message from Sophie's daycare. Nothing serious. Just a photo. Sophie standing proudly beside a painting covered in bright colors. Emily smiled instantly. Marcus noticed. There she is. Woo, the reason you survived this place. Emily looked at the photo again. Yeah. The kid's pretty great. She is. The conversation ended there, but Marcus was right. Sophie remained the center of everything. Every decision, every risk, every dream. That Friday, the company announced its annual charity gala. The event was famous within Sterling Dynamics, Thai evening attended by executives, investors, media figures, and local leaders. Most employees viewed it as a mixture of celebration and stress. Emily barely paid attention, until an envelope appeared on her desk. Gold lettering. She opened it carefully. Inside was a formal invitation. Her name printed clearly. She read it twice, a third time. Rachel walked past. You got one. Emily looked up.
I wasn't expecting this.
You should have. It's only been a few months. Rachel shrugged. So, Emily stared at the invitation again. The gala represented something larger than a party. Visibility, acceptance, recognition, proof that she belonged. The realization made her nervous. By the time she picked up Sophie that evening, she had already spent hours worrying about it.
What if I don't fit in?
Sophie looked confused. You fit in clothes.
Emily laughed.
That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? Emily considered how to explain. I mean, what if everyone there looks important? Sophie thought carefully. Are you important? Emily blinked. I don't know. You are to me. The answer hit harder than any professional compliment ever could. Saturday arrived sooner than expected. The biggest problem wasn't the event. It was the dress. Emily owned exactly 0 gala dresses. Buying one seemed irresponsible. Not buying one felt impossible. Fortunately, Rachel intervened again. 3 days before the event, she placed a business card on Emily's desk. My cousin owns a boutique. Emily frowned. What am I supposed to do with this? Go there. I can't afford. Go there. The conversation ended. Rachel had a remarkable talent for turning instructions into inevitabilities. When Emily visited the boutique, she expected discomfort. Instead, she found kindness. And by the time she left, she had a dress she never would have chosen herself. Elegant, simple, beautiful. The night of the gala, Emily stood in front of her apartment mirror, feeling almost unrecognizable. The dark blue gown fit perfectly. Her hair was pinned back. A small pair of earrings completed the look. For several seconds, she simply stared. Then Sophie walked into the room. Her eyes widened. Emily smiled nervously. What? You look like a princess.
Emily laughed.
No, you do. Sophie crossed her arms. I'm serious. Emily pulled her into a hug. Mrs. Jenkins would watch her for the evening. The arrangement was already settled. Still, saying goodbye felt strangely difficult. Perhaps because tonight felt important. Different. As the taxi approached the hotel, Emily's heart rate increased. The building glowed against the evening sky. Elegant lights, valet attendants, luxury cars. Everything looked intimidating. She nearly asked the driver to turn around. Instead, she paid the fare and stepped out. The ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light across polished floors. Live music drifted through the air. Servers moved silently among guests carrying trays of drinks. Conversations filled the room. Sophisticated, confident, important. Emily suddenly felt very aware of herself. The old insecurity returned. The old fear. Maybe she didn't belong. Maybe she never would. She heard a familiar voice. You came. Emily turned, and for a brief moment forgot how to speak. Alexander stood a few feet away, plateau. Perfectly tailored, effortlessly composed. The man always looked impressive. Tonight he looked extraordinary. His eyes met hers, and something shifted in his expression. A brief pause, a moment of genuine surprise. Then admiration. You look beautiful. The words were simple, but they landed with unexpected force. Emily felt warmth rise into her cheeks. "Thank you." Alexander smiled softly. "You seem surprised." "I am." "Why?" She laughed nervously. "Because I don't usually hear things like that." His gaze lingered. "That's unfortunate." For a second neither moved. Then the noise of the ballroom returned. Reality returned. Alexander offered his arm. "Would you like some company?" Emily hesitated only briefly, then nodded. The evening unfolded slowly. Alexander introduced her to people throughout the room. Investors, executives, community leaders. Each introduction carried quiet respect, not because she was connected to him, because he spoke about her work, her campaigns, her ideas, her accomplishments. And every time he did, Emily felt a little more confident, a little more certain, a little more deserving. At dinner, sat near each other, not directly together, but close enough. Conversation flowed easily, sometimes professional, sometimes personal, always natural. At one point, a board member asked Emily how she ended up at Sterling Dynamics. The table grew quieter. Everyone expected a polished answer. Instead, she smiled. "My babysitter got sick." Several people laughed. Alexander nearly choked on his drink. The story spread quickly. By the end of dessert, half the table was asking questions, told the truth. How she almost didn't come, how she nearly left. How a closed door became an opportunity. When she finished, the board member shook his head. "Good thing you didn't quit." Emily glanced briefly toward Alexander. "Yeah, good thing." Much later, music filled the ballroom. Couples drifted toward the dance floor. Emily intended to remain seated. Then Alexander appeared beside her chair. "May I ask you something?" Her heart immediately accelerated. "Okay." "Do you dance?" Emily laughed. "Not well. That's not what I asked." He offered his hand. The room seemed quieter somehow, smaller, more focused. Emily looked at his hand, then at him, then placed her hand in his. The dance floor wasn't crowded. The music was soft, slow, comfortable. Alexander guided her gently. No pressure, no performance, just movement. For several moments neither spoke. Then Emily smiled. "You're better at this than you claimed." "So are you." "I think you're lying." "Probably." She laughed. The sound seemed to make him smile. Around them, conversations continued. Music played. Lights shimmered. Yet somehow everything felt distant. Because for the first time, Emily wasn't thinking about work, or responsibility, or deadlines. She was simply present. Alexander looked down at her. "You've changed." The observation surprised her. "What do you mean? You don't look over your shoulder anymore." Emily considered that. Maybe he was right. Months ago, she had entered every room expecting rejection. Now she entered expecting opportunity. The difference mattered. "You help." Alexander shook his head slightly. "No, you did." "I opened a door." Emily met his eyes. "Sometimes that's enough." The music continued. Neither looked away. And for one brief, dangerous moment, the rest of the world disappeared. Not because they wanted it to. Because connection has a way of silencing everything else. When the song ended, neither moved immediately. The pause lasted only seconds, yet it felt longer. Meaningful. Then reality returned once again. Applause. Conversation. Movement. Alexander stepped back reluctantly. Emily noticed, and realized she felt exactly the same. Later that evening, standing near a balcony overlooking the city lights, Emily found herself alone for a moment. The cool night air felt refreshing. Necessary. Her emotions were becoming difficult to organize. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Quite a story. Emily turned. It was Derek, holding a drink, watching her carefully. She smiled politely. "Good evening." Derek glanced toward the ballroom, toward Alexander. Back at her. "You've come a long way." Something about his tone felt wrong. Emily recognized it instantly. Jealousy, resentment, the first real sign that not everyone was happy to see her succeed. And deep down, she knew the challenges ahead would not only come from self-doubt anymore. Some would come from people who never wanted her to rise in the first place. Derek swirled the drink in his hand and looked out across the city lights. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily had learned something important during her months at Sterling Dynamics. Most conflicts did not arrive with shouting, they arrived wearing smiles. "You've done well," Derek said. "Thank you." It's impressive. Compliment sounded correct. The tone did not. Emily remained calm. "I've worked hard." "Yes." He nodded slowly. "You have." Another pause. Then came the real reason he had approached. "Some people have advantages." Emily looked at him directly. "You know what I mean?" She did. But she wanted him to say it. "No," she replied. "I don't." Derek laughed softly. "You caught the attention of the most powerful man in this company. There's a difference between attention and opportunity. Is there?" "Yes." Her answer came instantly. Opportunity opens a door. Work determines what happens after you walk through it. His expression tightened. For the first time, Emily realized something. Derek did not actually dislike her. He disliked what her success represented. If someone like her could rise, excuses became harder to hold on to.
You really believe that?
He asked. "I do." Derek looked away. "Maybe." Emily decided not to continue the conversation. Some arguments could not be won because they were never about facts. They were about pride. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Derek." Without waiting for a response, she walked back toward the ballroom. Across the room, Alexander noticed her immediately. Not because he was watching constantly. At least that was what he told himself. But his eyes seemed to find her more often than they should. "Everything okay?" he asked when she reached him. Emily smiled. "Fine." He studied her expression. "You're a terrible liar." "I'm getting better." "No." A faint smile touched his face. "You're not." Emily laughed. The tension from the balcony began to fade. The rest of the evening passed peacefully. By the time she returned home, Mrs. Jenkins was asleep on the couch, while Sophie snored softly beside her. The sight warmed her heart. Carefully carried her daughter to bed. Half asleep, Sophie wrapped tiny arms around her neck. "Did you have fun?" Emily smiled. "Yeah, baby." "Good." Sophie yawned. "Mr. Fancy likes you." Emily froze. "Go to sleep." "I'm serious." "Sophie." The little girl was already asleep again. Emily shook her head. Children noticed everything, far more than adults realized. The following Monday brought unexpected news. The Northbridge campaign had exceeded projections significantly. The client was thrilled. Executives were thrilled. Rachel was thrilled, which meant she expressed approval by saying only 3 words. "Good work, everyone." In Rachel language, that was practically a standing ovation. The team laughed. Even Derek managed a smile. For the first time, Emily sensed a shift. Not everyone had become her friend. But many of the doubts surrounding her had begun to disappear. Results had a way of doing that. Success was difficult to argue with. A week later, Rachel called her into the office. Emily entered carrying a notebook. "You wanted to see me?" Rachel nodded. "Close the door." Emily immediately became nervous. That phrase rarely led to ordinary conversations. She sat down. Rachel slid a folder across the desk. Emily opened it, then stared. "Project manager." Her heart skipped. "What is this?" "A promotion proposal." "I can read." "Good." Rachel leaned back. "You've earned it." Emily looked down again. The words blurred slightly, not because she could not read them, because emotion suddenly flooded her chest. "I haven't even been here a year. You've done work that some people fail to do in 5. Emily swallowed. "This is real." "Yes." "Really real?" Rachel laughed. "Yes, Emily. Really real." For several seconds, she could not speak. Every difficult moment, every rejection, sacrifice. every night wondering if she had permanently fallen behind. All of it seemed to gather in that room. Rachel's expression softened slightly. Take the win. Emily nodded. I will. When she left the office, she called only one person before anyone else. Sophie. The little girl answered through Mrs. Jenkins's phone. Mama, I got promoted. Silence. Then, does that mean you're extra important now? Emily laughed through unexpected tears. Not exactly.
Can we get pizza? Maybe. Yes?
Clearly, Sophie understood priorities. That evening, celebrated with pizza, ice cream, and a movie neither of them actually finished because Sophie fell asleep halfway through, sat beside her daughter afterward, watching her, thinking. The apartment suddenly felt smaller than before. Not in a bad way, simply because their lives were growing, changing, moving forward. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She frowned. It was late. Carefully she opened it. Alexander stood outside, holding a small gift bag. Emily blinked. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood. That sounds suspicious. It probably is. She laughed and stepped aside. Alexander entered. The apartment seemed impossibly small compared to the spaces he usually occupied. Yet he did not appear uncomfortable. His eyes landed on Sophie sleeping on the couch. His expression immediately softened. She's out cold. Pizza victory. Understandable. He handed Emily the gift bag. What's this? Promotion gift. You didn't have to do that, I know. Inside was a leather notebook. Elegant, simple, beautiful. Emily ran her fingers across the cover. Thank you. You're welcome. For a moment, neither spoke. The apartment felt quiet. Comfortable. Dangerously comfortable. Family photos. Crayon drawings. School projects. Life. Real life. Not curated. Not polished. Real. I like it here, he said unexpectedly. Emily looked surprised. You do? Yes. Most people wouldn't. Most people are wrong. The words settled between them. Warm, honest. Emily sat down. Alexander joined her. Not too close. The distance felt intentional. Respectful. Necessary. For now. I used to think success would solve everything. Emily admitted quietly. Alexander nodded. I remember. You do. You said something similar months ago. She smiled. I talk too much. You talk honestly? Another silence followed. Alexander spoke. Can I tell you something? Of course. He looked toward the sleeping child, then back at Emily. You changed this company. She immediately shook her head. No. Yes, Alexander. You remind people that numbers matter because people matter. Emily stared at him. The sincerity in his voice left no room for argument. You changed me too. The words landed softly. Yet they carried enormous weight. Emily's heart accelerated. Neither looked away. Neither pretended not to understand. The truth had been approaching for months. Slowly. Now it stood between them. Visible. Impossible to ignore. Alexander spoke first. I care about you. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Because hearing it out loud made everything real. When she looked back at him, her voice was barely above a whisper. I know. I care about Sophie. I know. I don't want to make your life more complicated. A small smile appeared. That might be too late. He laughed softly. Then the seriousness returned. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. You're not. No. Good. He raised an eyebrow. Good. Emily smiled. Because I already have one. For the first time all evening, Alexander seemed genuinely nervous. What is it? Emily looked toward her sleeping daughter. Toward the apartment that had witnessed years of struggle. Toward the future she had once feared would never arrive. Then back at him. Yes. The word was simple, yet it changed everything. Alexander exhaled slowly. A smile appeared, not the polished smile people saw in boardrooms. Not the public smile used for cameras. A real one. Emily realized she had never seen him look happier. Months later, on a bright spring afternoon, the rooftop garden at Sterling Dynamics was filled with laughter. Employees moved between tables, decorated with flowers and ribbons. Music drifted through the air. The city stretched endlessly beyond the skyline. Sophie ran through the garden carrying a basket of flower petals. "Slow down," Emily called. "No," the response arrived immediately. Alexander laughed. "She gets that from you. I do not run. You absolutely do." Emily rolled her eyes. Some things never changed. Rachel approached carrying a drink. "Today's the day." Emily smiled. It is. About time." That was Rachel's version of emotional support. Marcus appeared beside her. "You know, I still remember your first day." Emily laughed. "Hopefully not all of it." "Oh, all of it." They spent the next few minutes sharing stories, remembering, celebrating, growing. Eventually, the small gathering settled. Tension shifted toward the center of the garden. Alexander stepped forward, confident, calm, certain. The same man who had walked into a lobby months earlier and changed a stranger's life. Only now, his life had changed too, Emily. And for a moment, everything else disappeared. The crowd, the city, the noise, everything. There was only gratitude, love. Not because one person had rescued another. Because they had recognized each other, seen each other, chosen each other. Emily thought back to the worst morning of her life. The babysitter canceling, the panic, the rejection, the humiliation. At the time, it had felt like an ending. Now she understood. It had been a beginning. Sometimes the door that closes is not the tragedy. Sometimes it is the moment that leads you to the right one. Sophie suddenly appeared beside them. "Are we a family now?" The question made everyone laugh. Emily knelt beside her daughter. "We were always a family." Sophie considered this, then nodded. Satisfied, she ran off again. Alexander offered his hand. Emily took it. The future remained uncertain. Life would never be perfect. Challenges would come. Mistakes would happen. Fear would occasionally return. But for the first time in years, none of that felt overwhelming, because she was no longer fighting alone. And as the afternoon sunlight poured across the rooftop garden, Emily realized the greatest change in her life was not the promotion, not the career, not even the success. It was learning that being strong did not mean carrying everything by yourself. Sometimes strength meant showing up. Sometimes it meant refusing to quit. And sometimes it meant accepting the hand that reached back toward you, the same way she had accepted it on the day a millionaire CEO walked into a lobby and refused to let her story end there.